picking up, let's pick up around 1508 or so. We're told that beginning 1506, for long they then discuss love's misery and bliss. Okay, we're talking about Sir Gawain and the lady of the castle, who's never named. All we will come to find out about her is that she is Sir Bertilac de Haut Desert's wife. She's not named. Okay, the older lady is named later on, and that's Morgan Le Fay. And so they talk about love's misery, bliss, and we talked the other day, 2 weeks ago, whenever that was, about Denis de Rougemont's book, Love in the Western World, where he argues essentially that true passionate love in Western literature is always sad. It always has I'm trying to remember the German word. The Liebestod, the love death, okay, in which one or both of the lovers dies. Romeo and Juliet, Lancelot and Guinevere, Tristan and Isolde are three classic models of this theme. So this is what's probably referred to with the comment about love's misery and bliss. And so she says, I would learn from you, if the question was not irksome, what the reason was that someone as young and valiant as yourself, so courteous and chivalrous as you are known, fair and wide, blah, 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 blah. Okay. She would learn what from him? Of love. She says, you're the one who is the model of courtesy. You're the one who is the model of the courtly lover. You should be teaching me, right? And she says, 1525, and you who make such courteous and elegant vows should be eager to instruct a youthful creature and teach her some elements of skill and true love. What, are you ignorant to enjoy such great fame? Or do you think me too silly to take in courtly chat? For shame, I come here alone and sit to learn your special play. Show me your expertise while my husband is away. Teach me your love tricks, in other words. And so Sir Gawain, in good response, okay, and by good response I mean he replies in such a way to not offend her, says, may God reward you. It gives me great gladness, pleases me hugely. One as noble as yourself should make your way here and trouble yourself, little old me. You know, little old Sir Gawain, nobody knows anything about. Okay, but to take on the matter, he says, of explaining true love to you, whom I know well, have more expertise in that subject by half than 100 such men. What has he just said about her? Okay, he hasn't quite said she's a slut, but he has said, you know more about love by a half than 100 men. In other words, she's been around the block. She knows what she's doing. He says, I can't presume to teach you. I can't even beg to teach you. I should be learning from you. He doesn't say that last part, because if he did, he would open the doors wide. And he's trying to be careful. Keep in mind, who's on the inside of his shield? An image of the Virgin Mary. Okay? He is dedicated to Mary. So, but to take on the task of myself of explaining true love, and treat the matter of romance and chivalric tales, to you whom I know well have more expertise in that subject by half than 100 such men as myself ever can, however long I may live, I will never know as much about love, he says, as long as I live. Would be absolute folly noble lady, on my word. I will carry out your desires with all my power. Okay? Why? Chivalry. He has already sworn an oath of fealty to her. So he is re-emphasizing his indebtedness, vassalage to her. So he says, as I am in all duty bound, that is, I am bound by my and always will be the servant of your wishes. May God preserve me. And that final little may God preserve me is suggesting may God help me, keep me, pure, chaste, all those things, the 5 5s from the Endless Knot. May God preserve me in all those things as I, what? Carry out your desires with all my power. In other words, he's asking God for grace to somehow protect him from breaking his chivalric oath and breaking his oath to the Lord of the castle and his oath to Arthur. The lady made trial of him, tempting him many times to have led him into mischief, whatever her purpose. She made trial, she tempted him, and then the poet tells us whatever her purpose. Why? Isn't her purpose rather clear? No. We think we understand the purpose. We think her purpose is to get him in bed. That's not her purpose. That's not her real purpose. The real purpose is to get him to fall, to sin. Okay? It's not necessarily to get him to have sex with her. Because we find out what the real purpose is at the end of the poem. But, we're told, he defended himself so skillfully that no fault appeared. No crack, chink in the armor. Right? Nor evil on either side. Coming in lightly dressed, meaning barely dressed, and she's tempting him and attempting to seduce him, apparently. And yet the poet says, sorry, I had bronchitis all last week, and I'm still not quite there. The poet says that there was an evil on either side. In other words, she is pure, chaste, if you want, virtuous, and he is pure, chaste, and virtuous. Nor anything did they feel but delight. There's sin in anything they've done so far. They laughed and bantered long, then she kissed her guest, charmingly took her leave, and went her way at last. And Sir Gawain gets up, dresses for mass, diverts himself with the ladies all day. Kind of wonder what that means. Has some fun. The Lord comes back. What does he kill that day in the hunt? Boar. So, day 1, he kills Bambi. Day 2, he kills a boar. Okay. Day 1, Sir Gawain gets a kiss. Day 2, Sir Gawain gets, let's go ahead and add multiple kisses. And then we're going to get the third day. Right? So, the Lord comes in. He gives Sir Gawain the boar. Sir Gawain gives him a kiss. And we're told, line 1641, now we're quit, Sir Gawain says, of all the agreements we made. And the Lord says, by St. Giles, who is the patron saint of hospitality, by St. Giles, you're the best man I know. You'll be a rich one soon if you keep on trading so. Here he's gotten venison and now boar. What's he going to get on the third day? And what is he giving in return, in exchange? Kisses. That's not costly. Doesn't empty his wallet. So they set up the tables. They have a big feast. They sing Christmas carols. There's dancing. And line 1670. Sir Gawain begs leave to depart the next day for the Green Chapel. And the Lord says, as I am an honest man, I give you my word. You shall reach the Green Chapel to settle your affairs on New Year's Day well before 9. That is in the morning. Don't worry, he's saying. Therefore, lie in your bed, enjoying your ease, and I shall hunt in the woods. And keep the compact, that is, the agreement. Exchange winnings with you when I return here. For I have tested. Okay? I've tested you twice, he says. And find you trustworthy. Okay? That word tested ought to be a clue to Sir Gawain that something's going on. That this is not just a mere exchange of winnings game. Okay? He is being, what's another word for tested? Tried. Okay? He's having his mettle proved. M-E-T-T-L-E, not M-E-D-A-L or M-E-T-A-L. Okay? He's having his integrity proven. Okay? And the knight says, I find you trustworthy. That is, first 2 days you were trustworthy. Now tomorrow remember, best throw third time. In other words, third time's the charm. If you're really trustworthy, if you're really true, you will be tomorrow. First 2 days don't really count. First 2 days are just kind of like lead up. They're the pre-exam. They're not the real exam. Okay? So, let's drink and be merry, he says. Sir Gawain drinks, goes to bed, lies, and falls asleep. And in the morning, the Lord goes off and starts to hunt. What's he hunting this day? A fox. Well, how dangerous is a fox? Have you ever seen a live fox? You know, if we're standing on this table, stands about this tall, looks almost like a cross between a cat and a dog. Okay? They're small, they're cute, they're fluffy. Yeah, they got teeth and they can bite and all that. But they're not mean or vicious. Okay? You can kill one easily from a stone's throw away if you have a spear or a bow and arrow. Okay? Or what? Or stone. Or trap, even. But why a fox? What's the difference between a fox and a deer and a boar? Foxes are smart. Foxes are what else? Smart? What other terms do we use to describe? Sly, crafty, wily, sneaky, deceitful. Oh, we start getting into negative terms there. Okay? Boars are big and dumb and stupid, and they just charge right through. Deer, innocent, benign little creatures that, you know, do Bambi stuff in the woods. And okay? So the fox goes off, trying to keep from being caught. Meanwhile, back at the castle, Sir Gawain in his castle takes his health-giving sleep behind splendid bed curtains on the cold morn. But out of love, the lady did not sleep. No. The purpose to weaken what that was fixed in her heart. She rose from her bed quickly, hastened there in a charming mantle reaching to the ground, richly lined with well-trimmed fur. No modest coif on her head, but skillfully cut gems, arranged about her hair fret in clusters of 20. In other words, she's got on this hairnet full of gems. So when she comes to his room this morning, she's coming decked out. Okay? Her lovely face and throat displayed uncovered. Her breast was exposed, her shoulders bare. She enters the chamber, shuts the door, throws open a window, calls to the night. And he wakes up from a dream, like a man overburdened with troublesome thoughts. How destiny would deal him his fate on the day when he meets the man at the Green Chapel. Because the previous 2 days were not the days he's supposed to meet the Green Knight. This is the morning. And so what's he dreaming about? I lopped his head off. What am I going to get in return? But when that lovely one spoke, he recovered his wits, broke out of his dreaming, replied to her. She approaches him, she laughs, she bends over his handsome face, daintily kisses him. He welcomes her politely, he sees her radiant, attractively dressed, every part of her so perfect, and in color so fine, hot, passionate feeling welled up in his heart. Probably other parts of his body as well. Smiling gently and courteously, they made playful speech. So what passed between them was happiness, joy, and delight. All right? Gracious words they spoke. Pleasure reached its height. In other words, he's standing at the knife's edge. Great peril threatened. Should Mary mind her knight? Notice who is doing the minding? Mary. Because obviously, where's Sir Gawain's mind? It's not on Mary. It's on the nearly naked woman who is leaning over him, kissing him, and talking with him. Okay? So notice, great peril threatened. If Mary hadn't remembered him, but apparently she had. For that noble lady so constantly pressed, pushed him so close to the verge, that either, notice, here are the two options. He must take her love there and then, or churlishly reject it. That is, reject it like a churl. A churl is the lowest level of society. Okay? We would call him a peasant. He felt concerned for good manners. Remember the 5 fives. Lest he behaved like a boor, like a cad. And still more, lest he shame himself by an act of sin, if he were to give in to his desires and treacherously betray the lord of the castle. Because that'd be kind of hard to give to the lord of the castle what she might be willing to give to him. God forbid, says the knight, thou shalt not. He doesn't say that literally, however. He says it in his mind. So he puts to one side all the loving inducements that fell from her mouth, and she said, you deserve rebuke if you feel no love for the person you are lying beside. Oh, she's gone from leaning over him, lying beside him in his bed. More than anyone on earth, wounded in her heart. What has happened on the part of the lady? What does she feel? Rejected. A lady in courtly love tradition cannot feel rejected. If she does feel rejected, then the quote-unquote courtly lover has violated the rules. So she says, unless you have a mistress, someone you prefer, and have plighted troth with that lady. Go back to where she begins. You deserve rebuke if you feel no love for the person you are lying beside, more than anyone else wounded in her heart, unless you have a mistress. If you have a mistress, if you have someone that you've given your heart to, I understand. What has she just given him? An out. A great, big, huge, gaping wide door that he could easily walk through and say, oh, yes, I forgot. There's Matilda back at Camelot waiting for me, pining away. Oh, my dear Sir Gawain, I love you, how I love you, you know, like bottom and... Okay? She gives him the opportunity, the opening. She says, and now I beg you to confess that honestly. All the loves in the world hide not the truth and guile. If only she hadn't said, tell me the truth. Because of his 5 fives, he can't lie to her. She says, tell me the truth. Tell me you have another lover. He says, by St. John the Beloved. Okay? In truth, I have no one. No for this while. No, don't have any. No, and I've not really been on the market either. I'm not looking. Ow. That's the worst you could make, she says. But I'm answered indeed, and painfully, I feel rejected. Kiss me now lovingly, and I'll leave broken-hearted forever. Okay? Sighing, she stooped down, kissed him sweetly. And she says, but one thing before I go. Give me something. Anything. Give me a present to remember you by. Okay? A ring of some sort. And he says, I wish I had something, but I don't. The dearest thing in the world I possess for your love. He says, I wish I had here. More because you have truly deserved it. More recompense by right than I could repay. But to give you as love token something worth little would do you. This shows you how smooth Sir Gawain is. Because he's probably got stuff all over him. But he says, I don't have anything valuable enough to give to you. Okay? He says, I don't have any servants with bags full of precious things. That grieves me, lady, for your time. And she says, no, it's okay. I understand. So let me give you a gift in return, or instead. You shall have... Holds out a ring of finely wrought gold with a sparkling jewel. Okay? And he says, no. Any gifts? No, I can't give you anything. You know, the principle of exchange of gifts. You give me, I give you something. He says, because I don't have anything to give you, I will take nothing. She pressed him insistently. And finally she says, okay, if you will reject my ring because it's too precious, and yes, the ring probably does have connotations. Okay, most scholars agree about that. If you reject my ring because you think it too precious and wish not to be so deeply indebted, I'll give you my girdle instead. Okay? Don't think of a girdle as a modern girdle. Just think of it as a sash at her waist. Okay? And so she unbuckled the belt, clipped around her waist, fastened over her girdle, woven of green silk with gold. She offers it, and he says, no, I can't take it, really. And then she... Now, are you refusing this because it's so slight? Because it's so little or insignificant? If you really knew what the power of this girl is, you wouldn't reject it. And he's kind of like, oh, really? Do tell. She says, see, it is indeed a trifle, and it's worth the when he knew the power woven into it would place a much higher price on it. For there is, as long as it is tightly fashioned about him, there is no man on earth to strike him down. Put this thing around you, and the strongest person on earth could not kill you. Because, you know, in like 45 minutes, I've got to go meet this big giant green guy who's got an axe and he's got a swing to take. This would be a godsend for he reached the chapel to receive his deserts. That is, to receive what he deserves. Could he escape being killed? The trick would be splendid. So he suffered her pleading and allowed her to speak. That's a poetic way of saying, tell me everything, about the power of this. So she said, just don't tell anybody. Don't reveal it to my enemies. Okay. And so they kiss again. He takes the girdle. And then what does he do? She leaves. Sir Gawain do? He gets up. He dresses himself. And he goes to church. Why? Well, possibly he's getting ready to die, so it might be good to say a last confession. He approaches a priest privately, besought him there to hear his confession, and to instruct him more clearly how his soul could be saved when he leaves the world. He confesses himself honestly, admits his sins, both the great and small, begs forgiveness, calls on the priest for absolution. Priest absolves him completely of all of his sins, except for maybe one that he's thinking about, but hasn't yet committed. Okay? What sin might that be? Keeping the girdle for himself. She told him, don't tell my husband. So what can't he do? He can't fulfill the agreement made the night before. The agreement is, whatever I get in the forest, I'll give to you. Get in the castle, you give to me. He can't give the girdle because he's sworn an oath now to the lady. And if he breaks that oath, his whole reputation will be in tatters. Okay? So the Lord comes back. He gives Sir Gawain this poor dead little fox. And Sir Gawain gives him a kiss. Right? Sir Gawain thanks them for a wonderful stay, line 1962. And it says, I have to go. Can you send someone to lead me on the way to the Green Chapel? And the knight says, willingly. Everything I ever promised you, I shall readily give. Sir Gawain doesn't understand the real meaning. The real meaning of that line is, we find out later, the person speaking to him is the Green Knight. And the Green Knight is saying, every promise I made, I will keep. Okay? So, Sir Gawain leaves, and we get part 4. Sir Gawain and the porter, the guy leading him, make their way off. Let's see here. I'm going to skip a bunch. They make their way off, and line 2091. The guide tells Sir Gawain, I know who you are, I know where you're going, and I love you dearly. I love you dearly. I don't want you to die. So, follow my advice. The place you're going to is extremely dangerous. There's a man in that wilderness, the worst in the world. Powerful, grim, loves dealing blows, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So he says, leave him alone. Let the man be. Line 2118. Get away from here by some other road. Ride through some other country where Christ be. I'll make my way home again, and I'll tell everybody that I led you to the Green Chapel. No ever know that you didn't keep your vow. Okay? Sir Gawain, many thanks. That you would keep loyally my secret, I truly believe, but however closely you kept it, if I avoided this place, took to my heels in fright, in the way you proposed, I shall be a cowardly knight, and could not be excused. I will go to the chapel, whatever may chance, and discuss with that man whatever matter I please, whether come of it as destiny decides. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Because what is Sir Gawain really doing? He is being a cowardly knight. What's he wearing? A lady's girdle, yeah. A cowardly knight, maybe a few other things. Okay. He's wearing the green sash that he's been told will protect you against any death stroke. You know, he's in good hands, as it were. It's not all state, it's all sash. Okay. He says, I will take whatever chance may come. No, he won't. He thinks he has an blessing against whatever may come. The other man says, okay, as you wish, you know. I won't hinder you. So he says, put your helmet on, take your spear in your hand, ride down this track, go by that rock over there until it brings you to the wide valley. Look to your left, some way off in the glade, and you'll see in the dale the chapel itself. So Sir Gawain goes on. And Sir Gawain says to himself, by God himself I shall not moan or cry. My life is in his hands. His will I shall. Lying to God. Okay? He said confession that morning. This is just kind of wiped out that whole confession. So he makes his way, he finds the glade, and then he sees off the hand side of the glade a mound. This is the Green Chapel. It's a hill covered in grass with an opening on one side. In other words, it's like a burial mound, a pagan site. Okay? Water running around it. It's very similar to the dragon's barrow in Beowulf, by the way. And he comes around, he hops off his horse, and he asks himself, can this be the Green Chapel, line 2185? This is a desolate place. This chapel looks evil with grass overgrown. Notice, he says it looks evil. Why? Because it's green, because there's grass, because it's not stone, it's not civilized. So he makes his way on, and he hears this sound. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of a giant sword or axe being sharpened on a whetstone. Okay? And he cries out at the top of his voice, who is master of this place to keep tryst with me? And he hears another voice say, wait. In other words, I'm not ready for you yet. Got to get my blade good and sharp. You shall quickly have all that I promised you once. But he keeps making that whirring noise. Why? He just wants to get on Sir Gawain's nerves. And when I say a whetstone, it's not like he's got a whetstone in his hand and he's holding his axe and he's doing this. He's got a whetstone, a wheel, that he operates with his foot, and it's this big, massive wheel turning, and he's got his axe, which has like a 6-foot blade, and he's sitting there going. Think if you've ever been in a metal shop or something, somebody grinding metal on a stone. Okay? It's not a pleasant sound, necessarily, especially when you realize the metal is being ground to take your head from your shoulders. Finally, he makes his way among the rocks, bursts out of a hole, and a Danish axe newly made for dealing the blow, with a massive curving back on the shaft, honed with a whetstone 4 feet across. Okay. The back is the back side of the blade. The blade is curved like this. Okay? This part's 4 feet. What's this? I don't remember the geometrical theorems, but it's longer than 4 feet. Okay? Shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. That's not a straight line. So it's longer. Okay? So, he walks over in green, okay, sets the handle on the ground, walks beside it, comes to the stream, hops over it, and he says, "Good sir, a man may trust your vow," to Sir Gawain. "Gawain," said the green man, "may God protect you. You are indeed welcome." Notice, may God protect you. Well, that's what Sir Gawain's been asking for, but Sir Gawain also is wearing his little insurance policy. "You are indeed welcome, sir, to my place. You have timed your journey as a true man should. You know the agreement settled between us. 12 months ago, you took what fell to your lot, and I was to repay you promptly at this new year. And here we are, by ourselves. No knights to separate us, so we can fight as we please. Take your helmet off. Come on, get ready. Make no more argument than I offered you then." Well, what argument did the Green Knight offer? "I'm not even going to give you my address until after you take your shot." Okay? Sir Gawain, "No, by God who gave me a soul, I shall bear you no grudge at all, whatever hurt comes about. Just limit yourself to one blow, and I'll stand still, not resist whatever it pleases you to do it all." Bends his neck. He bends over, shows his flesh all bare, that is, pulls his hair aside, pulls his collar down, doesn't want to ruin his good shirt after all. Seeming unafraid, he would not shrink in fear. Notice that verb, seeming unafraid. What does seeming mean? Pardon? Louder. Yes, he's afraid, but he's not showing it. Okay? It's like saying, Keith Richards seems clean. Keith Richards probably hasn't been clean since 1964. Okay? Clean meaning drug-free, not clean meaning unwashed or washed. Okay? So what happened? The green man gets ready, raises his axe to give Sir Gawain the blow with all the strength in his body. Now keep in mind, he's huge. And he raises this huge axe with all the strength in his body. And I think, if you're going to film this, you need to get some Mr. Olympia. Some guy who just, like Schwarzenegger was not in his 70s. Okay? Just muscles rippling everywhere. And he swings it as fiercely as if meaning to mangle him. Had he brought the axe down as forcefully as he acted, that courageous knight would have been killed by the blow. But what does Sir Gawain do? He's sitting there like this, the king over here, and he looks from the side of his eyes, and he sees the swing coming. And what's he do? He flinches. Who wouldn't? He pulls his shoulders up, makes his neck small. And as it came sweeping down to destroy him there, and hunched his shoulders a little to resist the sharp blade, the other man checked the bright steel with a jerk. That is, he pulls it just in time. "You're not Gawain, who is reputed so good, who never quailed me on valley or on hill, now flinches for fear before he feels any hurt." Flinches for fear. Notice, not for a real pain. Okay? I didn't flinch nor flee when you aimed one at me, nor did I raise any objection when my head went rolling on the floor, he says. You, though not wounded, are trembling at heart. If he's trembling at heart, then what does he not have? Courage. so I deserve to be reckoned the better man for that. Huh, look at that. I bested Sir Gawain, the Green Knight says. Sir Gawain, I flinch once, but won't. Twice hunch my neck. Hurry up, man, by your faith, come to the point. Deal out my fate to me, and do it out of hand. Okay? He's still wearing the green sash. Until your axe has hit me, take my true word. The Green Knight says, all right. Swings at him this time, savagely without harming him. Checked his blows suddenly. Sir Gawain waits, he doesn't flinch, and the Green Knight says, okay, all right, now you're ready. Sir Gawain, by this time, is just thoroughly ticked off. It's like you're playing with me. Okay? So now you have found courage. It is time for the blow. Now the order of knighthood given you by Arthur preserve you in your neck this time, if it has power. That is, may the chivalry that you speak to, the chivalry that you swear to, may it protect you. Okay? So Sir Gawain gets ready. The knight takes his stance, puckers his mouth and brow, raises his weapon, brings it down straight with the cutting edge of the blade over Sir Gawain's bare neck. He hurt him no more than to slash the back of his neck, laying open the skin. Okay? So that bright blood shot over his shoulders to the ground. He doesn't cut him a big, thick gash. This isn't a requires stitches. It's like a little scratch. Yes, the blood does come out, but it's not, spurting out. All right? And when the knight saw his blood spatter the snow, that is Sir Gawain sits there like this, and he sees red go on the snow. He leapt forward with both feet more than a spear's length. In other words, about 8 feet. And what does he do? Snatches up his helmet, crams it on his head, jerks his shoulders to bring his shield down, pulls out a sword. He's ready to go to town. And the knight's like, whoa, 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 what's going on? We're not here to do bad. Right? He says, our agreement is completed. Hold your attack. Sir Gawain says, I've passively taken a blow in this place. If you offer me another, I shall repay it promptly. One was due. And the knight's just standing there, resting on his axe. Out, Sir Gawain. Don't act so wrathfully in this place. No one has discourteously mistreated you here, or acted contrary to the covenant sworn at the king's court. In other words, why are you so angry? Calm down. Take a chill pill. Is that the red one or the blue one? I don't remember. No one has discourteously mistreated you. I promised you a blow and you haven't. Think yourself well paid. I free you from the rest of all obligations. What other obligations? Sir Gawain's got to be thinking, what's he talking about? What other obligations do I have to the Green Knight? I don't have any. He says, had I been more dexterous, maybe I could have dealt you a more spiteful blow to have roused your anger. First, I threatened you playfully with a pretense and avoided giving you a gash, doing so rightly because of the agreement we made on the first night. And Sir Gawain's probably sitting there going, what? First, there's only one night. Back at Camelot. When you faithfully and truly kept your pledged word, gave me all your winnings. What? What winnings? As an honest man should. That other feint, sir, I gave you for the next day. And it starts to dawn on Sir Gawain that the Green Knight is not just the Green Knight. When you faithfully and truly, I gave you for the next day, when you kissed my lovely wife and gave me those kisses. For both occasions I aimed at you 2 mere mock blows, without harm. Why? Because the kisses were without harm. Nothing was meant, nothing was taken. True man must pay back truly, then he need nothing fear. A true man must pay back truly. Then he need have no fear. Notice Sir Gawain had fear. Why? Because he didn't pay back truly. You failed me the 3rd time and took that blow, therefore. What? It's my belt you are wearing. Yeah, that one. Come on, take it off. That same green girdle. My own wife gave it to you, I know well in truth. But you weren't green back at the castle, Sir Gawain's got to be thinking. Now, notice, however, the other description of the knight of the castle. Big. Okay? What about the Green Knight? Big. Does that mean all grilled big guys are the Green Knight? No, but Sir Gawain ought to be able to put the 2 and 2 together. I know all about your kisses and your courteous manners and my wife's wooing of you. I arranged it myself. Sir Gawain's going, okay, strange marriage, but I sent her to test you. Well, what did he say to Sir Gawain on that 2nd night? I've tested you now twice. 3rd time's the charm. And to be truly, you seem one of the most perfect men who ever walked on the earth. Notice, not the most perfect man. But what kind of description do we have of Sir Gawain? Before that, the paragon of virtue, the epitome of chivalric life. As pearls are more valuable than the white peas, so is Gawain in all truth before other fair knights. Okay? But here you fell short a little and lacked fidelity, faithfulness. Okay? What's the here? Give me the sash. Because you didn't give it to me when you should have. It was not for fine craftsmanship, nor wooing either, but because you wanted to live. You accepted that not because of its beauty. You accepted that not because of how well it was made. No, you accepted that because you wanted to live, because you feared death. So I blame you the less. Because everybody wants to live. You know, it's wired into us. Self-preservation. And Sir Gawain stood speechless, we're told, a long while. I imagine when he stands speechless, it's because his lower jaw is on the ground and he hasn't picked it up yet. He's just sitting there completely dumbfounded. Mortified and crushed that he inwardly squirmed. More than crushed, why? He's been caught. He's been caught how? Why? What did he tell the porter who led him to the Green Chapel? Well, I could never do that. That would be false. I would be a coward. Hello. My name's Coward. That's what the sash has proven in him. All the blood in his body burned in his face. Why? Shame. Embarrassment. He winced with shame at what the man had said. Curse upon cowardice and covetousness. Notice, because he was a coward, because he feared receiving the return stroke, he coveted this green sash. Breaking one of the 10 Commandments, by the way. You, that is cowardice and covetousness, breed boorishness and vice that ruin virtue. Boorishness and vice don't ruin virtue. Cowardice and covetousness ruin virtue. Okay? It's individual choices, bad choices, poor choices, that ruin virtue. He took hold of the knot, looses the buckle, and throws it at the Green Knight. There it is, the false thing. Is it the garland? Or the sash? That's false. No, it's just a piece of cloth. A piece of cloth can't be true or false. It is what it is. It's like saying, this is a false pen. It's not really a pen. Looks like a pen, but it's not. It's idiotic. Okay? There it is, the false thing. May the devil take it. He's just thrown it to the Green Knight. Is he saying the Green Knight's the devil? For fear of your blow taught me cowardice. Yes and no. I don't think we have to take everything Sir Gawain says as being the quote-unquote God's truth, because I do think Sir Gawain is trying to put a spin on it. Did fear of the blow teach him cowardice? So what did it do? It revealed his cowardice. Okay? To give way to covetousness, that is, the cowardice, gave way to covetousness. It taught me to be false to my nature. No, no, no. Liar, liar. It taught him to know his nature. What is nature? How is he born? Inclined to sin. Okay? In the Western Christian tradition, you have this term, original sin, which according to St. Augustine, Bishop of Hippo in North Africa, meant, and this is why it's in the Western tradition, meant you are born with the guilt of Eve on you, on each one of us as an individual. That we are individually responsible for their sin. We bear that guilt, and because of that, we go off and sin on our own. Okay? And Sir Gawain says that fear of the blow and that the sash taught him to be false to my nature. No, it didn't. It taught him to understand his nature. Prior to the sash, now and think about himself. Hey, I'm Sir Gawain. He believed his press clippings. Everybody said about him. Paragon of virtue. Paragon of romance. The guy who could talk most about love. All of that nonsense. He believed. Okay? Fear of your blow taught me cowardice. Fear of your blow taught me to give way to covetousness. Fear of your blow taught me to be false to my name, which is the generosity and fidelity expected of knights. Are generosity and fidelity part of nature? No. Those are traits. Those are virtues that must be learned. And how do you learn them? Through practice. Through practice. By being generous. by being faithful. Go back to Lawnval for a minute. How generous was Sir Gawain at the beginning of the poem to Lawnval? Not at all. Okay? Because nobody was generous to Lawnval. So if we take that as an example, little chink in the armor there. Now am I false and unworthy. Yeah, he's starting to really understand something about his nature. And I've always dreaded treachery and deceit. My misfortune and grief befall both. Go back for a moment to the very beginning of the poem. Well, not quite the very beginning. When Sir Gawain speaks, and Uncle Artie, if he could take on the task, what does he say? Pages 268, 69. Top of 269, right-hand column. I am the weakest of them, that is, of all the knights of the Round Table. I know, I am the dullest minded. My death would be no great loss, if truth should be told. No virtue I know in myself but your blood. What is this an example of? We talked about humility. What is it really an example of? We get to this passage towards the end of the poem. False humility. He's saying he ought to say. Okay? It's not real humility. So he says, Sir, humbly I confess, my good name is marred. There he goes again. I humbly confess, my good name is marred. He's not being so humble there. He's talking about his good name. His good name was built upon a ruse. It was false. As I humbly confess, he's not humble. He still doesn't get it. Let me regain your trust. Next time I'm on guard. In other words, next time I'll do better. No. What the saints of the church, both the Western saints and the Eastern saints, teaches is the real saints will say, no, I won't do better. I'll fall again. I'll screw up. But then I'll get back up and I'll dust off and I'll try. And guess what? I'll fall again and I'll get up and dust myself off and I'll fall again until I die. Sir Gawain doesn't get that yet. He's thinking, oh, I made a mistake. Now that I've done that mistake, I'll be perfect from here on out. Okay? The other man laughs. The wrong you did me, I consider wiped out. You have so cleanly confessed yourself, admitted your fault, done penance on the edge of my blade. Where are they? At the Green Chapel. Where was Sir Gawain that morning after he took the sash from the Green Knight's wife, but before he met the Green Knight? He went off to a chapel to say confession. But he lied in his confession because he did not confess. What is it impossible to confess? A future sin. You can't go to church and say, Holy Father, I confess my sins to you, including what I'm planning on doing at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Because the priest is going to say, no, doesn't quite work that way. You confess what you've already done, and you try not to do those you're thinking about. Okay? And if you do those you're thinking about, then you say confession. We're going to talk in a few minutes, if we have time, starting Chaucer, about the medieval practice of indulgences, okay, which set Martin Luther over the top. So he says, no. Now you've said a real confession. Because he has said, I am false and unworthy. Yeah, you're right about that. Okay? Now you've said a true confession. You've done your penance. I consider you washed. You're clean. Why? Blood has been spilt on the snow. Psalm 50. Wash me and I shall be white as snow, it says. So he says, you're absolved. You're as if you had never transgressed from the day you were born. I make you a gift, sir, of my gold-bordered belt. Throws it back to him. Keep it. Since it's green, you may remember this meeting in the world where you mingle with princes of rank. What does he mean with princes of rank? All the powerful and mighty. It will be a true token of the exploit of the Green Chapel among chivalrous knights. Okay? It says it will be a reminder. That's what a token is. Okay? He says, now let's go back to my castle. Let's revelry, he says. So no, I can't go back there. I got to go back to Uncle Artie and such. But he does launch Sir Gawain into a diatribe. He says, commend me to that gracious one, your lovely wife. Well, and the other honorable lady, the ugly old fat, squat, broad-buttocked one, who have so cleverly deluded their knight with their game. And then what does he do? Notice, he says, the wife that tricked me. Oh, yeah. And that brings me back to Adam. Eve went and tricked. Delilah went and tricked Samson. Bathsheba went and tricked. Whoa, stop, pause. Okay. Delilah, you can understand, they were married. Adam and Eve, yeah, that too. David and Bathsheba? What was Bathsheba doing? Yeah, taking a bath. Okay. Outside on the roof of the house, but that was standard practice back then. All right? And what's David doing? Peeping Tom. 3 or 4 houses. Oh, look at that, guys. Is she married? Send her husband off to the Eastern Front. I want him dead. After he gets her pregnant. All right? A little bit different situation there. And so what does he do? Women. Live with them, can't live without them. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. And especially damned if you do. Because they're all the problems in the world. This is a traditional, medieval, what's called anti-feminist rant, which is rather an anachronistic phrase because there were no feminists in the Middle Ages. Not even the wife of Bath, which talk about in a couple of days, or Thursday or whatever. He says, but for your belt, yeah, I will take that. Not for the girdle, nor for its silk, no. I'll keep it for one thing, as a sign of my feeling. In other words, remind him of what? Humility. Real humility. It will remind him of his nature, that he's not as good as he thinks he is. Okay? And he says, but you got to tell me, who are you? What do you call yourself rightly? And he says, I am Bertilac of Haute Desert. Okay? Which if you were to translate, that is, if you were to say, okay, what do those names mean? Bertilac, some versions it's Bersilac, the Haute Desert, means the green lake by the high. So that people have tried to say, oh, the green lake by the high desert. well, we can now trace the geography of this, and so we need to find a by a high desert. Well, not a real desert, because there aren't any deserts in England. So it must be in the moors, but it's got to be somewhere around Chester, because that's where the poem was written, somewhere around there. And so they go and they try and find green lakes in the high moors, somewhere around Chester, to find out where the Green Knight... It's a story. It's not real. Doesn't mean there's really a green chapel out there somewhere. Okay? So he says, and the one is my wife, and the old one, through the power of Morgan, who lives under my roof, and her skill and learning, well taught in magic arts, she's acquired many of Merlin's occult powers. He says, she transformed me into... She sent me in this shape to the round table. Why? To make trial of your pride. Not your, specifically Sir Gawain. To make trial of the pride of the knights of the round table. Which is why when he rides in, he says, who's governor of this house? He's trying to tick off Arthur. He's trying to irk Arthur's pride. She sent me to drive you demented with this marvel, to have terrified Guinevere and caused her to die. She wanted Guinevere dead. Well, that's a fun little game. Okay? She's actually your aunt. Arthur's half-sister, the Duchess of Tintagil's daughter, whom noble Uther afterwards begot Arthur upon, blah, 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 blah. So, come back to the castle, pay your respects to your aunt, and he's kind of like, no, she makes people, tries to kill my other aunt, Guinevere. Family strife, Thanksgiving at their house. But Sir Gawain says no, he rides back to Camelot. And he tells Arthur and the other knights everything there. He holds up the girdle and says, 2506. This belt caused the scar that I bear on my neck. No, it didn't. He put the scar on his neck by not giving the belt. Belt's not the cause. This is the injury I have suffered for the cowardice and covetousness that seized me there. He's kind of retreating from what he'd learned. Cowardice that seized me. No, it was there all along. This is the token of the dishonesty I was caught committing. Yes, true. He admits it. And now I must wear it as long as I live. In other words, this is a sign, you could say, of his fallenness. Most of us, thankfully, don't have a sign of our brokenness, our incompleteness. Okay? For a man may hide his misdeed, but never erase it. In other words, he'll bear it until he dies. For where once it takes root, the stain can never be lifted. Well, what's the stain? That. Okay? And Arthur goes, it's okay, Sir Gawain. Chill. In fact, that's a good thing to have. And he says, and we will all wear it. So, a baldric of bright green, crosswise on the body, similar to Sir Gawain's and worn for his sake. They all wear. Now, what the poet has just done is he's given us a fictional account, the founding of the Order of the Garter, which people are still sworn into today. There's a yearly service for investiture into the Order of the Garter. Okay? And they actually do wear a bright green garter. Okay? And we get this little French motto at the end. Honi soit qui mal pensé. evil to him who evil thinks. Thinks. Okay? Which is the order, or excuse me, the motto of the Order of the Garter. Your gloss tells you the Order of the Garter was instituted around 1344. Pretty good earliest dating for Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. It can't come before then. Okay? Because we know it gets its motto from the Order. The Order does not get its motto from Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight dates somewhere between 1350 and 1375 during that period of the alliterative revival. Okay? Any questions about it? Okay. Then let's, with the few minutes we have left, because we need to get into Chaucer, talk a little bit about Chaucer. I've already discussed excuse me, the three estates and the background to the Middle Ages, so I don't need to do that. But I do need to emphasize that what we see in Chaucer, in this pilgrimage of people going from London to Canterbury, is this cross-section of English society. We do see the three estates very, very clearly, right? Because we have the knight and his son and the yeoman, who are all part of the aristocratic class. Okay. We have the nun's prioress. She has priests with her. We have the pardoner, the friar, the parson, the sumner. Seems like there's another one in there. Here, the everybody else class. We have the plowman, the partner, the parson's brother. Okay. And then we have all kinds of other people. We've got Manciple, we've got the cook, the miller, and a variety of others. Now, what are they doing? They're making their way to Canterbury. Why? Well, they're going to the shrine of St. Thomas of Becket, or Becket, who was killed in 11. Okay? If you remember when we talked about Marie de France, the king at the time, 1154 to 89, was Henry II, who was married to Eleanor of Aquitaine. Thomas of Becket and Henry were good friends. All right? Drinking buddies. In fact, they were more than drinking buddies. They were drinking buddies, whoring buddies, gaming buddies, all that kind of stuff. And the Archbishop of Canterbury died, and Henry had the power to appoint the Archbishop. Henry thought, oh, I got a great idea. I'll appoint my best friend to be Archbishop. Thomas Becket said, don't do this. You don't want to make me Archbishop. For one reason. If you're Archbishop, I will become Archbishop. In other words, for me, it won't merely be a title. I will truly behave like an Archbishop. I will be the archpriest of this parish, meaning the parish of, okay? I won't be going off drinking and whoring and partying with you anymore. Henry didn't listen to him, and he made him Archbishop. And Becket did exactly as he said he would. He became a serious churchman. Okay? Where before he was a nominal Christian, go to church and then go off, whoring, drinking, and partying and such. And it got to the point where Becket fled England because he was afraid of Henry. And he went off to France, and he sought out the Pope. This was when there were period in the Catholic Church when there were two popes. There's one in France and there was one in Rome. Each had deposed the other, indicated the other, and thought they were actually the only correct pope. He sought out the Pope, and the Pope said, "No, you got to go back. You're Archbishop. You have to be Archbishop. You have to take whatever comes." He's like, "Okay." He goes back to England, and at every step of the way, it seems that Becket opposed Henry's will. Henry's trying to raise taxes on people, and the Archbishop is saying the people can't afford taxes, blah, 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 blah. And apparently one night, according to anecdotal evidence, in late December, I think this actually occurred on December 28th, Henry is in the Palace of Westminster in London, surrounded by his knights, and in a drunken stupor. He says, "Will no one rid me of this?" Meaning the Archbishop of Canterbury. And three of his drunken knights get on their horses and ride to Canterbury, which is a several hours ride. They get there on December 29th. Becket has received their coming. Okay? So he goes to Canterbury Cathedral, and he goes to the altar, the high altar. And he is praying when the men come, bust through the doors, and they kill him on the altar. Talk about a desecration. Okay? Kill him on the altar. Word gets back to London, and Henry's like, "I didn't mean it. I didn't really want him dead." Keep in mind, he and Becket had been, as it were. So, Henry does penance. And here's the penance he does. He rides to the city walls of Canterbury, and then he gets off his horse, and this is in winter. Keep in mind, he does this like a day or so. Rides to the city walls of Canterbury, gets off his horse, and crawls on his hands and knees to the city walls to the cathedral. He crawls hands and knees on broken glass up of the cathedral as a sign of penance. Okay? Becket was made a saint, if I remember right, 11 years later, which is pretty fast in the Catholic Church. Usually, it takes a minimum of like 30, 40, 50 years, over 100 years, before someone is made a saint. Okay? He is sainted fairly quickly and becomes the most popular saint's site to visit in England. Okay? So this is the background of the poem as it begins. And so it starts with these lines in Middle English. Juan that the prule with his shoes sota, the drocht of march have passed to the rota, and by the ivory vine and switch mature, of which virtue engendered is the floor. Here is ache with the sweat and breath, and spirit hath in every halt and hath, the tender croppus and the young sauna, hath in the ram his half course irona. And small a fool is maken maladia, that slepen or the nicht with open ear. Saw pricketh him nature in her courages, than longen folk to go on pilgrimages. The first 11 lines are one great big long phrase. When, then. When what? When winter is over. Okay? When the weather starts to warm up, like it did this weekend. Okay? Birds are out. Bees are out. Flowers are opening. Then he says people want to go on pilgrimages. They want to get out of the house because they've been cooped up all winter long. Okay? So what do? They go from every shire's inn to Canterbury. And so Chaucer says he was on his way to Canterbury. Now, caution, when I say Chaucer says he was on his way to Canterbury, I mean Chaucer, the pilgrim. I do not mean Chaucer, the author, because Chaucer, the pilgrim, is a very different bird than Chaucer, the author. Chaucer, the pilgrim, is an idiot. He's a moron. Okay? But know that not because of what we have in our book, but because of in the Canterbury Tales, Chaucer the Pilgrim tells a tale. And he's a moron. He's not a good tale teller. He's kind of stupid. In fact, he's so bad, everybody else makes up because the tale is really bad. It's got bad rhyme. It's got bad rhythm. It's got bad meter. It's boring. Okay? Which is why it's never anthologized. So, he says he was on his way to Canterbury, and he was in Southwark, which is on the south side of the Thames River, near where Shakespeare's Globe would later be built. Shakespeare's Globe was built in the district of Southwark. And he's at the Tabard Inn. You'll go today, you can go to Southwark Cathedral, part of which dates from Chaucer's time. Okay? So he says, I was at the Tabard, waiting for my departure time, as it were. And he says, and at 9:23, we're going to stop in just a minute. At night there came into that hostelry 29 in a company. Okay? So you have Chaucer sitting in the Tabard Inn, and 29 people come in a company. A big group. Doesn't mean they all start together. It means kind of as they made their way to London, people kind of glopped onto this group. So you have Chaucer plus 29 pilgrims for a total of 30 pilgrims on their way to Canterbury. Now, one other person is going to join them, but he's not joining them as a pilgrim. Right? This is the host. Inn. Right? And I'm going to jump to the end of the prologue for a brief moment, and then we're going to come back on Thursday, and we're going to hit some of the highlights of the prologue. We're not going to talk about all of it. So that Tuesday you'll be up for the wife of Beth. At the end of the prologue, the host says, I got an idea. You guys are all making your way to Canterbury. Let's do this. The contest. And you all have to agree to my rules before I tell you what the contest is. And they're kind of like, okay. Here's the contest. You will each tell 2 tales going to Canterbury. So 30 pilgrims times 2 towards equals 60. And you will each tell 30 times 2 tales from Canterbury for a total of 120 tales. He doesn't do all the math. He just says, we'll each tell 2 tales going to and 2 tales coming from. And I will decide whose is the best tale. Whoever tells the best tale gets to go free. That is, the rest of us will pay for that meals and lodgings. Are we agreed on this? Okay. All right? So, at the outset of the poem, check the case. We're going to have 120 tales. And yet, by the time we get to the end of the poem, the entire end of the poem, you have less than 30. Why? Well, most scholars say it's because he didn't finish it. It's incomplete. All right? It may not be. I'll leave you with that.